This is the Mercedes EQB, and it's here to show you that you don't need to spend £100,000 on a Tesla Model X to get an electric car with 7 seats. Now, the EQB is going to go up against the likes of the Audi Q4 e-tron, VW ID.4 and Tesla Model Y, all of which are currently available in 5-seater form only, although we do expect a 7-seater Model Y in the near future in the UK. Now, does having a third row of seats give the EQB the edge over its rivals? Well, today I'm going to try and find out. But before we go any further, if you like what we do, why not give us a thumbs up and subscribe for more awesome videos just like this one. If you think the EQB looks familiar, well, it's because it's actually based on the same underpinnings as the Mercedes GLB, its piston-powered entry-level family SUV. Now, in a lot of instances, that would put the EQB at a disadvantage because, well, it's essentially designed around having a big engine up front. However, Mercedes has managed to put the batteries below the passenger compartment, which should open up as much space as physically possible. Onto the way it looks, the car we have here is actually a German car, a very, very early production model that's been sent over for us to have a look at, and it isn't actually going to be representative of what we get in the UK. However, the versions that we get in the UK will all at least be AMG line at launch, and that means that you get this AMG style grille at the front and also these faux vents at the bottom, which is very reminiscent of what you see on other AMG cars. Now, the face is very similar to what you get on the EQA. It's entry-level electric car, and you even get the same LED kind of monobrow that runs along the front of the car. Personally, I'm not a fan. Let me know what you think of body-wide LEDs at the front of the car down in the comments. Down the side of the car, we've got cladding around the wheel arches and at the base of the car, just to show you that it's an SUV. Entry-level cars in the UK will come with 18-inch wheels. You can upgrade to 19s if you want. These, however, are 20 inches and are available on edition cars. But the big difference that we've got from something like the EQA to the EQB is the back end. Now, the EQA is much more of a lifestyle SUV, which kind of slopes down towards the back here for a, dare I say, sportier look, whereas what we have here is full-on family SUV. The roofline sits a lot higher in the EQB, and that's all designed to maximize space if you get this car in 7-seater form. And the back of the car is very flat, again, to maximize space. We've got an LED light strip that runs along the back of the car as well. And while I'm not a fan of it at the front of cars, I think when it's at the back, it can look really good. Now, while we're talking about practicality, we might as well talk about boot space. One of the reasons you'll probably go and buy an EQB. Now, all cars that come to the UK at launch anyway are going to be 7-seaters, but this German car here is a 5-seater, which I'm sure we'll probably see later down the line when this car arrives over in Blighty. Now, the 5-seater car that we have here has 495 litres of storage, and that goes down to 465 on the 7-seater. Now, that kind of puts it in the middle-ish of the competition. It's not as small as something like a Ford Mustang Mach-E, which is really quite small, nor is it nearly as big as an Audi Q4 e-tron, a Skoda Enyaq, or the absolutely gigantic Tesla Model Y. It's a pretty bare bones boot as well. We don't actually have any automatic releases for the rear seats. However, you do have a little underfloor storage tray to keep your charging cables if you want to carry them with you. There's no extra storage at the front of the EQB. Instead, they've just put all of the kind of electrical gubbins up here, and it actually looks like they've just left the motor of the GLB up front. They haven't, though, before I start getting lots of weird comments below saying I can't tell the difference between an electric motor and an engine. Anyway, when this thing launches in the UK, you will have 2 options to choose from, and they're both dual motor all-wheel drive models. So you've got one motor at the front, one motor at the rear. It starts off with the 300 4MATIC, which produces 228 horsepower, and goes up to the 350 4MATIC, which produces 292. Now, powering those motors is a 66.5 kilowatt hour battery, which has a maximum range of 257 miles. Strangely, though, you usually find that the more performance-focused version, or the more powerful one, will have a slightly lower range than the less powerful one, but Mercedes quotes pretty much the same figure of 250 to 257 miles for both models. Now, what we are expecting is later down the line a single motor, potentially front wheel drive model to launch as a long range version. It won't be quite as fast, but it might just get a little bit closer to the 300-mile mark. So when you come to charge up that battery, the EQB accepts charging speeds of up to 100 kilowatts. And if you find a suitable charger, it'll go from 10 to 80% charge in about 30 minutes. Now, actually, in the grand scheme of things, the EQB isn't all that great, because if you take something like a Tesla Model Y, it charges up to 250 kilowatts on Tesla's current supercharger network. And there's something like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and Kia EV6, which are built on 800-volt architecture, and they can go all the way up to 350 kilowatts. Now, realistically, it's still quite hard to find a fast charger in the UK that accepts 100 kilowatt charging. However, it's all about future-proofing. Yes, we might not have that many rapid chargers in the UK at the moment, but in 2-3 years' time, 350 kilowatt charging might be a bit more prevalent, and you might be stuck behind with the EQB. Now let's talk about pricing. It all starts at £52,145 for the entry-level AMG Line 300 and goes up to £53,645 for the 350. You can also get AMG Line Premium versions of both cars, which carries a £3,000 cost and includes things like 19-inch wheels, wireless phone charging, and a better sound system. You'll also find a cheaper sport variant will come later down the line, and I'm sure you'll get even cheaper versions of that again if they do a front-wheel drive single motor variant. Now, how that compares with the competition, something like a Tesla Model Y is going to cost you a little bit more in long-range form, but as the name suggests, you will get a longer range with over 300 miles, and something like the Audi Q4 e-tron has already got quite a comprehensive range already, and you can get it for a little bit cheaper at £41,000. Still, none of them have 7 seats like you'll get on the GLB, not yet anyway. And if you're wanting to shop around, why not check out yesauto.co.uk, because we've got plenty of new and used deals on electric cars. While the outside of the EQB looks a little bit different to the GLB with some EQA highlights, in fact, if you want to watch my review of the EQA, click the link in the top right-hand corner. But the actual interior has been lifted pretty much straight from the piston-powered car. There are some subtle differences though to remind you that you're in an electric car if the silence wasn't a giveaway, and they include blue highlights around the vents. You've also got blue stitching on the doors, on the seats, on the floor mats as well, and there's even a glow-up EQB logo on the door sill. The build quality is up to a high standard as well. You've got this really lovely steering wheel with silver highlights in the center and very nicely damped buttons. You've also got silver elements on the dashboard and physical buttons for the climate controls. Nice work, Mercedes. The seats, while they look very nice, they don't actually feel as though they're made of the highest quality leather, and support is lacking a little bit. But what dominates the cabin are these two 10-inch displays that are kind of merged together to form one big panel. And I think Mercedes has some of the most vibrant and sharpest screens on the market, because both the digital instrument cluster and also the infotainment screen just look stunning and are nice and responsive as well, something you don't find in a lot of cars at this price range. It runs the latest version of Mercedes' MBUX software and includes some new features such as an EQ menu that's all about getting data on your electric settings and changing different options. And while there are a lot of menus and it's quite a comprehensive system, you don't actually need to use the touchscreen if you don't want to. There's actually a touch panel down here in the center console, and you also have two touch controls on the steering wheel, a little bit like a 90s laptop. Now, the back seats of the EQB is a story of two halves, and I'm going to tell you that story. Now, I'm just under 6 foot, and legroom is actually really good. I've got the driver's seat in my position, and I've got plenty of knee room. Same goes for headroom. In fact, it's actually really good in the EQB because we've got that taller roofline, so it doesn't slope downwards at the back like a lot of SUVs today. I've still got a lot of space, so if I'm 6 foot and over, you'd be absolutely fine. The other side of the story though is that the rear seats aren't actually all that comfortable because they're completely flat. You can see my legs are kind of far up in the air. And there's this big gap between my leg and the base of the seat. And that's because the seats are basically right on the floor of the car. In fact, I believe part of the battery is underneath here. Now that's not something that's an exclusive problem to the EQB. I've seen it on plenty of other electric cars as well, but some manufacturers are getting around it by putting the base of the seat at the same height and then kind of lifting the front to give you more of a bucket-like feeling. Kind of wish Mercedes had done that, because while I think this is absolutely going to be fine for short journeys, a long journey might start to feel a bit uncomfortable. On the road in the EQB, and while this might be a purely electric car, it's your very typical Mercedes driving experience. That's to say that it's very hushed, it's very smooth, and it's also extremely easy to get to grips with. And while this is a German car in the limited run edition spec, it's still going to be pretty much exactly the same experience as what you'll get on the UK cars. That being said, we do have the 20-inch wheels on this car. Now, it's not currently listed on the options list in the UK, but I'm sure if you went through your dealer, you'd be able to get those lovely big rose gold style wheels that we've got on this car. And it does mean that the EQB can just be a little bit crashy in certain circumstances. Now, I'm rolling around the roads of Milton Keynes, which are pretty damn smooth, but I've just come across the odd pothole and speed bump that sends a nasty judder through the car. Now, I don't think that's down to the suspension. I feel like it's actually quite a softly sprung car. I think a lot of it is actually just down to the wheels being so big. And yes, while this is available as a 7-seater, the EQB is still a relatively small car. So 20-inch wheels on a relatively small car does send the odd shock through the cabin. Now let's talk about the power. This is the 350, meaning we've got 292 horsepower, the nippier of the two cars. And it really does actually feel very quick. There are different driving modes in here. If I whack it into sport, the throttle response becomes really snappy. Now, it's not going to rip your face off like a Model Y, which is an insanely fast car, even in the slower long-range form, but it feels fast enough. Now, again, the figures that I quoted earlier for range, they seem to be identical for both the 350 and the 300. So most of the time, I would say sacrifice a bit of performance to get a longer range, particularly with electric cars still being relatively in their infancy. But with both cars having pretty much the same range on offer, I actually suggest paying a little bit more just to get this extra punch, because it really does feel nice and brisk. But then if you wind it back to comfort or eco, things do become a lot more relaxed and just easy to drive. There's still that punch there, but most of the time, if you're like me and just want to conserve as much battery power as possible, you'll be running with it in eco mode, and that's when it feels a little bit more just like a relaxed, regular GLB, just with electric power. So, like a lot of electric cars, it can recuperate some energy under braking, and you can change the severity of that by using the pedals at the back. So if I hit the right pedal, the plus button, then it'll just coast as normal. It tries to actually maintain as much speed as possible without using battery power. But if I pull on the left paddle, I get a slightly harsher regen, and if I do it again, it's even more severe. In fact, if I lift off the accelerator, you saw me there, you can actually lean forwards ever so slightly because it does really put the brakes on. So you do have that option for one pedal driving. There is also a feature on the EQB of where if you hold the left pedal down, it'll do it automatically. So in some instances, say when you're cruising, it might try and maintain that speed when you lift off the accelerator, but if you're just pottering around town, it'll then up the regen to put a bit more power back into the battery. Now, Milton Keynes has a lot of roundabouts, and by going through many of them, I've come to realise that the EQB is A, relatively softly sprung, and B, it can just lean over in the corners a little bit. Now again, this is an SUV, it's quite tall, so I would expect there to be some body lean, but it's just a little bit more than I was anticipating. Also, the seats don't feel like they're quite as supportive as they should be. So if you're going round a roundabout, not at speed, but you have a little bit of pace, you will feel like you're falling out of your seat. Now this is just a first drive, so I'd need to live with it a little bit longer to give you a proper definitive verdict on what the EQB is like. But overall, the EQB does feel like a really solid electric car. It's not perfect. I think the ride can just be a bit of a mix of being too firm at times and then too soft at others. I don't think the range is hugely impressive, nor do I also think that the charging speed is that great either. But cars shouldn't be rated on numbers alone. You need to look at them as a whole product. And I think that's where the EQB really works. We've got a really fantastic interior with a great amount of technology, so it feels like the kind of place you want to be and you want to drive. Personally, I think the Q4 e-tron feels like a more complete package, but then again, it doesn't come with 7 seats. And also, if you want that real luxurious feeling and can look past some of the key numbers and also a slightly jittery ride, then the EQB, I think, is the car for you.